1 Timothy 4 reads, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in the latter times there will be some who renounce their faith willingly and knowingly by paying attention to deceitful spirits and the doctrines of demons. Now they will do this through lies, untruths, hypocrisy, and their consciousness will be seared as if with a hot iron." Today we're going to be talking about a great deception that has worked into our world and has really been an instrument of killing truth, of killing ultimately God, as we see there in the Gospels. Now, this is a conversation that's really important, and if you're out there listening to this, I want everyone really to listen to this message because I want to be able to bring something meaningful to us so we can navigate the world. I know there might be a lot of different people who come to some of the sermons and messages I have online, but this is one that we all really need to understand. And it may appear to be something which is more high-minded and philosophical, but it's actually very important to everything we do in our world around us. Because we have seen, as a society, untruth, things which are outright lies, creep in, and it seems as if they cannot be defeated. There has been wicked deceptions come into our world, and we've seen people who are otherwise intelligent, well-meaning, and, well-to-do people who have given over to things which are so wretched, despicable, and completely separated from truth and ultimately from God. So today, we're going to be talking about how we've been deceived, how truth has been killed, and the alternative title I have for this is Thinking with Principles and Not Formulas. Because if you're out there and you're listening to this, we have people to save. We have a society to bring to revival. We have the gospel and its work to declare and do in the world around us. We have a lot of very important things to do as the people of God who are called and saved by Christ Jesus. And we've got to step into a place of holiness and maturity. The world has given us a false version of love and said if you're a Christian, you just go out and you preach love all the time, but you never actually call people to higher things. And that's important to emphasize that while God is love, love is not God. And a real mature love is like what we find in Hebrews 12, which disciplines people, or in Revelation 3:19, where Jesus says, "Those whom I love, I rebuke and chastise." Or Jesus in Matthew chapter 16, verse 3, where he rebukes Peter as if he is Satan. Real love actually calls people to something higher and doesn't just keep you in the snares and traps below. So today, I've given like a 2.5-minute introduction here, but we're going to be talking about something very serious, and it pertains to 1 Timothy 4, the doctrines of demons and how they have woven into our culture with all this diabolical propaganda. So first things first, memes are really good at teaching things. And this is a meme that I came across. This isn't one sent to me, though. Send me your memes and your thoughts, questions, and comments. This is a meme that I actually found, and it teaches everything I have been talking about for quite a while, and it does it in a really clever way. I tend to be long-winded, but this is really quick. All right, so the meme that I've got here, it is a Star Wars meme, and even if you're not into Star Wars, the relevance of it is the same. And it's got Padme and Qui-Gon Jinn next to one another. One is obviously a woman, she's a queen, and the other is a Jedi Knight, he's a warrior, and you've got these two characters set together. But the meme says up at the top, what if I told you that Padme is actually Qui-Gon Jinn? And it shows you on one side Qui-Gon Jinn and the other side Padme. And it's got one head, long hair, 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, is human, wears clothes, 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 feet. You know what? They actually missed a few things. They're wearing clothes that are generally white. Their skin color is similar. Their eye color is similar. The general form of their body is similar. When you put them in the grand scope of eternity, they have a similar mass and they live for a similar amount of time. There are so many ways that we could write books and volumes of book about how Padme is actually Qui-Gon Jinn. But guess what? Padme is not Qui-Gon Jinn. What you see here is someone has constructed a formula for how you determine whether or not a person is a person, whether or not someone is this specific, person, Padme Amidala, or they are Qui-Gon Jinn. And they've got it laid out with all the checklist, all these pieces of logic and reason as they would appear. But yet, at the end of the day, it's fundamentally untrue. And you see, what we have here is a type of thought which appreciates formulas without actual principles, without the actual underpinnings. What you basically have in this meme here is a house that has no foundation. God, when he came and he made the heavens and the earth, he is full of reason. He is full of logic. He is full of purpose. He puts logic into the world around us. He instituted the natural law. Things like, do you want to have a new tree? That tree, it will have a seed. That seed, it will go into the earth and it will bear fruit and multiply, and there will be more trees, and they will go on through the generations of trees. If you want creatures to reproduce with one another, well, they have a mom and a dad who come together and they have a child, and that child grows up. He leaves his father's house and he goes and has another. You find this with the base animals and also with men and women who are the creature made in the image of God with humanity. And God puts all these laws together. If you sow goodness, you will reap goodness. If you sow wickedness, well, there's going to be more wickedness on the earth. There are laws around the world, even things like gravity, where if I pick up this cup of tea next to me, I drop it, it's going to hit the ground. But you know what? There's no magic rule that says without God, you would actually have all those things as a constant. And I know I'm getting to the philosophy more than I wanted to early on. We're going to look more at this towards the end. But there's no magic rule that says gravity should be as solid today as it should be tomorrow. If you come from the popular belief system of that people have now, kind of like Darwinism or just the random chaos of the world, where things just magically appear, well, then why wouldn't gravity magically go away tomorrow? There's no actual rule that says that it must stay the same. It's just something we accept as being true because it's been so reliable, it's stood the test of time. We take it for granted. There's a lot of unseen things which we always hold as being true that we're not able to prove. You can't fully prove why 2 + 2 = 4. It just always does. And just the same way that you can't always prove mathematics, even though you can, you have to just accept that math itself is reliable, and then the formulas and the equations work. We also have to accept things about the universe larger, like God and the good, the true, the beautiful, that it's actually upright for a man to honor his wife, that it's upright for a man to honor the contract that he signs when he's about to purchase something or whatever it may be. We have been given a lot of propaganda that has led people astray, and it all ties back to this meme. And I know I've gone down a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but we've really got to step into this. I want to go now to 1 Timothy chapter 1, and beginning in verse 3, Paul says, I urge you, as I did when I was on my way to Macedonia, to remain in Ephesus so that you may instruct certain people not to teach any different doctrine, and not to occupy themselves with myths and endless genealogies that promote speculations rather than divine training. That is known by faith. But the aim of such instruction is love that comes from a pure heart, a good conscience, and sincere faith. Some people have deviated from these things and turned to meaningless talk. That's a really important word here. You see, if I were a better host, I would have just started with this meme and I would say, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with saying Padme is in fact Qui-Gon Jinn when we've got all these pieces of evidence to support that claim? They both have one head, they both have long ears, or long hair and 2 ears, if I can read the meme right. They have 2 eyes, 1 mouth, 2 arms, 2 hands. There's all this evidence to say Padme is Qui-Gon Jinn. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? There's a lot of people in our world who try to explain history. They oftentimes want to tear down Western civilization. They want to reject the past. They also want to tear down men and fatherhood and the family. They want to tell ladies that it's not good to be a mother and to have children, that that's not what will bring you, great meaning in life, that going out and working a job and working for a boss, that would be more meaningful than actually carrying on your bloodline and passing on all those wonderful things in your family, the good times together, creating all those memories, all those things which actually give life meaning. They try to tell young ladies that that's less valuable to you than going out and, having whatever job it is and whatever bank account comes in accordance with that. And it's just insane stuff. But it's meaningless talk that has been woven into our society, and it's brought a terrible amount of destruction. And back to 1 Timothy chapter 1, beginning in verse 7, it says, a lot of these people, they desire to be teachers of the law. And again, a lot of the people who push the most demonic and wicked ideas in our society are people who have worked their way to the top of institutions. They are teachers, they are professors, they're clergy a lot of time. And I know I'm a pastor. I'm not criticizing the clergy because I hate the clergy. It's because I love the clergy and I love the church and I want to see goodness abound in the church. And, there's no magic rule that says they won't be corrupt. Evil is where evil goes. And verse 7, they desire to be teachers of the law without understanding either what they are saying or the things about which they make assertions. This meme does not understand what makes a man, or a woman, much less what makes Qui-Gon Jinn, or Padme, when they simply reduce it down to two hands, two arms, one mouth, two eyes, and stuff like that. It sounds true, and you can make a really compelling case for it, especially if you're talking to someone who knows nothing of Star Wars or nothing of what the human form looks like. If somebody was totally ignorant of that topic, you could really sell them that these two things are the same, when in fact they are not. And this is one of the ways that we have had our society totally rot. It's one of the ways that the church has really lost her way, is we have gotten ourselves to a point where we think with formulas as opposed to principles. And again, that's the alternative title we have here, and it's a really important thing. So that meme, it works with a formula. And here's the problem with that. Formulas only work when you are dealing with other people who accept the same premises you do. They accept the same things to be true as you do. That formula is obviously wrong. And when I say premises and the things we accept to be true, if you have watched Star Wars, you're probably a man or a woman from planet Earth. That's just how it is. And you probably lived sometime after 1970. That's just how it is. That movie came out in the 1970s, and Qui-Gon Jinn and Padme, they're more of a product of the 90s, but they're from the Star Wars universe. If you watch this, you know what people are. You know who these characters are, and you're not fooled into thinking they are one and the same. You know that this is a little bit ridiculous. But if you don't start with that fact, if you don't know what a man or a woman looks like, if you don't know what a person looks like, if you were some creature like you see in the Star Wars universe that had never seen, mammals before, you had never seen organisms and life forms that looked like we did. Maybe you're a droid and you've never seen anything like us, or maybe you're a giant snake. You might be sold on that. But when you start with the right principles, and you can actually use the word principle with P-A-L or principle P-L-E in this case, because we're talking about first things and also virtues right here. If you don't start with the same starting point, the formulas really don't matter. Because here's one of the things which is really crazy. When you get to those doctrines of demons that Paul talks about in 1 Timothy 4, the first doctrines of demon being things which are insincere and untruth. So the insincerity being hypocrisy and untruth being the falsehood that we find there, the lies. Lies still work with formulas. Untruths still work with formulas, and that meme teaches you that. The untruth that those two people are the same person, that still checks out in the formula. And in our world, just some practical examples, you might be told, well, somebody has spent their whole life studying a certain topic, therefore they're an expert in it. The formula says you spend your whole life studying something, therefore you must be an expert at it. Or you spent your whole life having that as your job, therefore you must be a great leader in that field. You must be someone who really knows what you're talking about, right? Well, what's unfortunate is actually, no, there are a lot of people who have had a job or a position, or they've studied something their entire lifetime and have been utterly wrong about it. That formula doesn't actually mean they're right. I have just a few premises that I operate life with. One, God alone makes the good. We're all fallen creatures. And then evil is where evil goes. Truth is where truth goes. And ultimately, providence is where providence goes. Everything else is just magical sorcery and fake rules that don't really exist. So in our modern world, there's a lot of things which come up that are this exact meme. And here I am going to bring up some things which are political topics, but that's where evil is currently residing. Things like critical race theory, CRT, it comes and it tries to rewrite history. You see things like the 1619 Project, which try to say America is not founded on the Mayflower Compact. There's no coincidence that they named that 1619, right? Because the Mayflower Compact was signed in 1620. In 1620, people showed up in America and said, in the name of God, for the glory of God, to the advancement of the Christian faith, a voyage into the unknown, into the northernmost parts of Virginia. And we're here to do that for Christian purposes. We're here to expressly reject tyranny, to reject things of oppression, and to actually liberate people, to allow men and women to all pursue all that is good, true, and beautiful, that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which is so quintessential to the American philosophy and the American experiment. Things like critical race theory, the 1619 Project, chose the year 1619 because they wanted to create a formula that says America is not what America is. They want to rewrite history. They want to make people so propagandized and so uncertain of themselves that they will have no confidence and they'll be miserable. And they'll be also easily overrun by evil and ruled by wickedness, which ultimately separates people from God. Like, being ruled by tyrants is not just bad because of what it does to your personal freedom, but it's also bad because it keeps feeding lies and untruth to people and leaving people lost and ultimately on the road towards hell. Tyrants do not like truth to be prevalent in their society. They don't like a society of righteous people. They like a society of obedient people, and that's a different thing. You go to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is in conflict with people worshiping God. The people in exile don't have a great time in their faith, as much as the biblical scholars like to talk about how in the time of exile, people worked out a lot of those faith secrets. That is certainly true, but also in the time of exile, there were whole swaths and generations of people who didn't know who or what a Moses was, who had never even heard of the Passover. They had never even understood that there was something special about the Jewish people, and like the language Hebrew is something to be valued. When you see Nehemiah's reforms there are people who are just completely ignorant of who God is and that they even have a special covenant with him in their lineage. Being in exile is very bad. Being ruled by tyrants is very bad. It leaves people in a very decayed state. And you look at some modern places where you see all this tyranny going on, places like China, they don't want people to flourish in the gospel. The gospel has to be underground. And they don't want people to actually have those good fruits. And whenever they find it, they crush it. It's a very evil thing, and it's not good. The church should not be complicit and say, oh, we're going to exile. It'll be great and be fun. We'll have our spiritual deepening weeks, and it'll all be great and fun. No, what you will find is that you will turn into a remnant, and a lot of people will be trapped in the road to hell. And when we all go to the day of judgment, God tells us there in Revelation 21:8, the cowards are counted along with the adulterers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, and all that stuff. And God also tells us in Revelation 21:7, those who overcome, they will inherit all things. We have to be people who want to confront the evil and pull people towards it. We have to love people enough that says, hey, there's a bigger meaning than just the falsehoods of the world. But what we find in 1 Timothy 4 is that people willingly turn away from truth and they embrace evil. Now, I know I've been really deep in philosophy in this so far, but I also write short stories, and I have a series of short stories out which are called The Adventures of Midheaven. And they are in the vein of some of the other fantasy novels that we've seen in Christianity, but they're a little bit geared towards adults just because of some of the topics they discuss. They're not like sexually explicit or something gross like that, but just the maturity of the writing. I'm really trying to target to some adults and young adults, but also people of all age. I'd be fine reading it. But I have two stories that I've put out so far that feature a villain who is named the Mosin. He's a moat maker. And he's a monster who builds moats around different things. He builds moats around truth. He builds moats around beauty. And he builds moats around the family. And his whole purpose is, how do I keep people from embracing the good things which God has in store for them? How do I keep people from embracing the meaning which God has in store for them? And basically, that whole character is, how do I get people to do exactly what's found in 1 Timothy 4, beginning in those first really 5 verses, to reject everything that is created by God, to have no thanksgiving, no gratitude, no holiness at all, but to only just live in lies, to live in hypocrisy, to sear your actual conscience. In fact, one of those 2 stories is about convincing a man to sear his conscience without him even knowing he does it. And that has happened in our society. And one of the ways that it's happened is we have been taught to think with formulas rather than principles. Because when you look at this actually sounds very logical. You look at this meme that Padme is actually Qui-Gon, and it sounds logical. And in fact, it is logical. But the problem is its first principles are wrong. Logic itself It requires unseen things which must be accepted. And now in philosophy, these are called the a priori facts. These are your a priori assertions. Take, for instance, gravity. We don't actually have any assurance that tomorrow the world will not disintegrate into some, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange ring and pop up in another universe and gravity and all those laws be altered a little bit. We don't have any assurance of that. It could happen. But it seems crazy because we've had such a long history of gravity being reliable, and we have one sun that comes up every day, and we don't expect tomorrow to have a giant ring in the sky and have 3 suns come in with a horde of, locusts from another dimension coming in upon us. But those things are not actually impossible. There's no magic rule that says they won't happen. Now, we oftentimes pretend like we're the sane people who accept all these things which are proven to be true, but a lot of those things are still unseen. And if we are to have formulas like saying, hey, somebody spent their whole life studying this, or this is where their whole life has been dedicated, the only time those formulas are reliable is when those a priori facts, those first principles, those first virtues are accepted. And really, the virtues that Scripture teaches us are things like children are good, family is good, we are fallen creatures. And again, we are being political here today. When you come to like an issue such as children, and there are a lot of people who want to abort children, their a priori premise that they start with is, one, children are not good inherently. And I don't mean children as in like their soul is not going to be fallen, but just like life itself is not inherently good. They don't believe that family is inherently good or that it's better than pursuing your own desire or career or whatever that is. They make the same arguments the old people did in the Bible times when they would feed their children to the demon Moloch. They would say, well, we need to have better crops next year, so we'll feed our children to them. People today, they say, well, we want to have this career, I want to have this, popularity, I want to have this figure for longer, so I'm going to kill this child. A lot of times, you'll see in our society, when the church tries to navigate these things, they'll come up against arguments like, well, you wouldn't want us telling you what to do with your body. That's a formula. It's not about what one person tells another person to do with their body. Now, that is something of importance, but it's of a lesser importance than the first principles of evil is evil and good is good. Tyranny is a big problem of people telling other people to do with their body. But say when it comes to receiving and I'm not going to say this online because there's a problem with Facebook and all these places censoring people, but a problem with something going like this into your arm, they'll say, well, you were all for telling people what to do with their body, when it came to the issue of abortion, but now that it comes to this issue of something being, put inside your body, you're not in favor of that. So what is it? Well, the truth of the matter is principles matter more than the formulas do. Killing children is evil, and then also forcing people to do things against their will, which are not based in truth, that is also evil. Forcing people to comply with things that bear false witness is evil. Depriving people of truth is evil. It's not about formulas. It's not about the formula of what you tell somebody to do with their body or not. It's about the formula of good and evil. Or excuse me, the principles of good and evil. And the formulas are lesser things. And what we have found in modern America, even though this is not explicitly said, is that when you take away those first principles, you take away what people really believe, you cannot ever have the formulas work. It simply turns into the Marxist will to power, where this is what I want, therefore I'm going to force it on you. And if I get to use a formula, that's great. If I don't, who cares? And some examples of that, which have happened recently, I know some people that run a daycare in another state, and they had a child at the daycare who had at one point in time gone to a doctor and been diagnosed with a certain illness, an illness that is very popular to talk about right now and is will get you banned online if you say the wrong things about this illness. But they had not actually taken the test for this illness. And the state told them, you have to shut down, and everybody that's been in that class, they have to be sent into quarantine and things like that. But the child had not actually been tested. They had only been diagnosed with this. And they actually went and took a test, and it came back negative, but the state said, well, you know what, you've got to shut them down anyway because they were exposed to it, and the doctor diagnosed it even though there was no affirmation of that test. So basically, the state was willing to go along with the lie because they wanted to impose their will on this group of children and their families. And if there were facts to back it up, they'll use the facts. If there are no facts to back it up, well, then they're going to do it anyway. They just don't care. And we in the church, we realize if we want people to have the goodness of the gospel, if we want to look at the Beatitudes and read something like, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will inherit the kingdom of God, if we want to actually be peacemakers, we have to understand that that is not the same thing as being a peace sorcerer. It's not the same thing as being a peace wisher, someone who simply agrees with peace. To actually have peace and to have a society that has peace, you have to be willing to go out and make it. And, I realized in my mind that's Matthew 5:9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God. Not that they will inherit the earth. I confused that a little bit with blessed are the meek, Matthew 5:5. But the principle that I'm trying to get at is if you want to be a peacemaker, you actually have to earn it. Peace is something which is a reward. It's like unity. Unity is earned after you can assert a vision that people can be unified around. You even find Proverbs saying this, the people that has no vision, they will perish. And we have got to learn to go out and assert the good, the true, and the beautiful. So when it comes to the issue of, say, American history, and people want to come in and pull out this meme and say, well, we've got all this evidence that the America's founded in 1619, the answer is no. No. It's not just wrong, it's nonsense. And ideas like that, you cannot defeat them by debate. You have to defeat them by other tactics. You have to, in some cases, treat them as fire and remove the kindling from them, because some demons gain power just by you saying their name. And in other times, you're going to have to go into battle with it and look more like St. Michael there in Revelation chapter 12, where there is a real battle, where the evil one does get his neck and throat slit, and he's thrown aside. Like there are times where you have to confront things that way. There are other times where you have to confront it by ignoring it. But in all things, we go to 3 John, verse 11. The one chapter there in 3 John, imitate that which is good, not that which is evil. Those who do good, they have seen God, and those who do evil, they have not seen God. We have to understand that the gospel does not call us to be passivity. In fact, that is Adam's sin there in the garden, but we are called to be a people who, with love and compassion, even for our enemies, we come to them and say, we want you to be pulled from the jaws of hell. We want you to step into this deeper meaning, this deeper life that is better than just swirling around your own desires, because desires, they're never a good guide. Swirling around just the natural felt interest in things that you have, those things are never fulfilling. But getting back to how God made us and stepping into those greater commandments, which bring us more and more meaning. So we've talked about this for a while, and the big takeaway from this lesson, and I hope I've done a good job of communicating it. I know I kind of get going and it's basically just a stream of consciousness here, but we have to think with principles. It's about the time of the new year. People are coming out with resolutions. You want a good resolution? Think with principles. I have a friend who's another pastor on my district in the Church of the Nazarene, and sometimes we've talked on the phone. And I've been very critical of a lot of things going on. And I'm not doing it just for the sake of being negative. I'm not actually that sort of person in real life. I have a lot of hopes and aspirations. And I found such joy in walking in the truth and not buying into a lot of the scams. But in our conversation, he was like, do you just feel that anytime religion is official or it gets put in a university or something like that, that it's automatically ruined? And in our conversation, he was still listening for that formula. Like anytime it becomes official, anytime it gets put in a university, it becomes, soiled or sullied in some way. And that's not what I'm claiming at all. My claim is simple. Evil is where evil goes. And right now, we're in an age where our institutions are not interested in asserting the good, the true, and the beautiful if it's inconvenient. They only are really willing to do it if the price is cheap and they don't actually get called any names or anything like that by the world. In many cases, this comes because people have a very immature understanding of holiness, an immature understanding of character and reputation, and they have put on a excessively high pedestal this really tame countenance, which is not biblical holiness, and they think that speaking with a furrowed brow and acting really soft is what the gospel looks like. And I've kind of said it's a bit of a joke, but also very serious. The problem with our good Christian men is they think they're good Christian women. And we have forgotten that God actually made Adam to be high tea, that he is actually made to go out and provide and defend for his family. And when Christ comes, Christ is going to return with a sword. And even when Christ was here now, with us born through Mary and the deeds and the acts and the mercies and miracles of the gospel, those things, they were not compliant with the world. They weren't just going along with Rome to do whatever Rome wanted them to do. There's all sorts of laws in Rome where if Jesus was this faithful citizen that a lot of people pervert the gospel into, well, then he would have gone into pagan temples. He would have done all this adulterous, orgy, garbage stuff that pays homage to Rome. He would have gone along with a lot of other things. And even within the Jewish law, he would have, bowed down whenever the teachers told Jesus to stop teaching his disciples. They would have cut out their tongues willingly, as the ruling councils want them to do. And none of the fruits of neither the gospel, the book of Acts, or the letters of the New Testament would have ever come to anything. The gospel is about something more deep than that. It's about finding, God and the meaning that God has for all of life, both here and now and also for all eternity. So we have to think with those principles. We have to assert what is good and true. We have to assert what is meaningful. And I think we'll end there. Thank you for joining me. I'm Pastor J. Dillon Proctor. I guess I didn't introduce myself early on, but okay. Send me your thoughts, questions, and comments. May God bless you, and may you have joy and joy abundance.